Hi, this is Pokey Chatman, head coach, Indiana Fever, with Swish Appeal Real Talk. Another really exciting game from two great teams in our league. And I just have to start with the obvious: defense, defense, defense. You always expect, as you go through a series with a short turnaround, with teams that are known for their defense, with the level of players that are on the court, you know the scouting report, tendencies. You always expect for some of the play calls and the sets to be very familiar with one another. And it's just a matter of the intangibles. I will have to say, from the very beginning to an 8-point first quarter with Minnesota, LA came out the gate firing on all cylinders defensively. And oftentimes you don't hear that. You always think about finals. You think about all the MVPs, the number of medals, gold medals of both teams. You think it's going to be high-powered offense. And I like to credit the defense, because as coaches, we always talk about defense and rebounding as winning championships. And obviously, a team that does that the most at the highest rate throughout this series is going to be victorious. And, we always talk about dictating. LA dictated. They made Minnesota extremely uncomfortable, and it continued. I'll go right to the half. If anyone would have said that Minnesota, one of the highest scoring, probably the highest scoring team in the league at this point, would be in the 60s, that's enough to win. And that's not going to happen often. And the easiest thing to do would be to look at the final stat sheet. And I purposely did not do that. I didn't want to throw numbers out. It's easy to watch the game and think about the names you didn't hear. Simone Augustus held scoreless the entire game. Maya Moore held scoreless the first half. Now, granted, she came on especially in that third quarter and throughout the fourth quarter, but it was still uncomfortable baskets. They're running sets for her, but it's closely guarded. At some point, great players are going to make great plays, but you always have to think it's not going to be enough. It wasn't like it was broken plays. But I'll go on to say at the top of the broadcast, they were talking about key players, and they were talking about a halftime feature that was going to be had with Chelsea Gray and Odyssey Sims, and I thought it was so fitting. You think about the superstars that are on the court, but then you have to think about the two players that's going to control the team and run the team. And I thought throughout the entire game, both those players had their moments. It was never too high. It was never too low. And let me say this. Let me credit LA. They got off to a slow start offensively with their superstar. So they come out first play of the game. You're going to get the tip. Minnesota doesn't want to win the tip. They get the ball. They run it set, penetration, kick. Nneka Ogwumike's on the board early. Next possession down offensively. They run some dribble handoff action, ball changes sides of the floor. They get into the middle pick and roll, and we'll talk about that a little bit tomorrow, but they had a lot of action in the middle third of the floor. Really hard to get your help side there. And you got some players that can go downhill. You got some players that can come off that middle pick and roll and pull up. Come off the middle pick and roll, penetrate and kick, or come off the middle pick and roll, hesitate, and throw the ball to the roller. But just a lot of good basketball, even better defense, especially by LA. And we always talk about Candace Parker, and rightfully so. People talk about her being engaged, and it's fatiguing sometimes when you're the player you're counting on offensively. Defensively, she's handing out assists. She's rebounding. In this particular series, what people don't talk about is she's guarding someone who's pretty daggone good. Even if she doesn't start off guarding Sylvia, they're switching some of those post-to-post screens, or she's helping. That's a big body that's on you. You're running the floor. So hats off to Candace in terms of leading her team and being engaged and making sure that they were in a position to win this game, even withholding some of the runs that Minnesota had. Gray and Odyssey Sim. This is a hats off to Chelsea. There was a play, 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Game's getting really, really close. Chelsea comes off and has a bad turnover. And you can hear Brian, he's really frustrated. She's frustrated. She walks back. She has her hands over her head. She's thinking about it. I think it's maybe a 2-possession game at that point. And this is where you see the maturity of players. The very next defensive possession, she gets a steal. And those are the things that won't make the stat sheet. Well, it makes stat sheet because it's a steal. But a lot of times as coaches, we like to gauge a player's next best action after they make a crucial mistake. And you can see that she didn't let it linger really long. She got herself back into the play, and she was able to, come up with the steal. And then you saw that momentum shift there. And I think also fitting was you fast forward to the end of the game, and now the shoe's on the other foot. After a free throw, Minnesota goes to inbound the basketball. LA picks up full court pressure. They have those young guards in there, and 5-second call. No timeout was called. So it's one of those things where as coaches, we talk about there are no little things. Every possession is the game-winning possession. Oftentimes people will talk about the last possession of the quarter, the last possession of the half, the first possession. It's every single possession. So that was a crucial mistake. I just thought it was, I don't want to say ironic, but maybe it was ironic that it was a 5-second call. But it speaks to how LA started the game defensively, dictating, getting deflections, making Minnesota uncomfortable, and then getting that 5-second call to end the game. And, oftentimes when, the team is victorious, we obviously spend a lot of time talking about what they did to have success. I like the fact that I'm only talking about defense in terms of a team like LA. That's Showtime. That's one of the highest scoring teams in the league, one of the better passing teams in the league. They play with so much pace. But I also want to give credit to some Minnesota players that this won't get talked about. You think about Simone not having a good offensive game, going scoreless. And you think about Maya being scoreless in the first half. Someone had to carry that load. Certain people had to step in, step up. And a couple of players that come to mind, you think about Renee Montgomery. Lindsay Whalen wasn't in the mix a lot. So I thought Renee did a great job knocking down some threes. They were double teaming Sylvia. She was doing a nice job of fanning opposite, finding some open players. I thought she was really good in that aspect. But then the rookie, Alexis Jones. I looked at her body language a couple of times, and she didn't look like a rookie in her body language. She didn't look like a rookie in being shot ready. She really stepped up to that moment on that stage. Now, some people could argue that it's not a lot of pressure. I would disagree. It's the finals. It's game 3. You're on the road. I think that is basically a sign of being with a veteran team, with a very good coach who has high expectations, and being ready for that moment, because you never know when it's going to come. And I think that's some of the things that players should think about. Yes, coaches tighten up their rotation. Yes, there's players that's been in that position to carry their team to success, but you have to stay ready. It may not be 30 minutes. It may not be 20 minutes or 15. It may be 10, but make it quality minutes. And I thought she did a really good job in that with Brunson not being effective, Whalen, Moan, and Maya in the first half. It was really nice to see some of those players off the bench. I thought even in the third quarter, when Minnesota started getting a little bit of a rhythm, went on a run, they had a couple of lineups in there that were so small. And, you think about it, the team that's making the adjustment, they're obviously, trying to find an advantage. Spread the floor, get some spacing. If the double team comes, there's some shooters out there. But also there's the flip side of it. That small lineup has to guard some people. So I thought even though Minnesota closed the gap a little bit, LA was able to handle some of that. And, I want to go back to the Chelsea Gray and Odyssey Sims halftime. Holly Rose talking to them, and you could hear the maturity in Odyssey. you can see the confidence and maturity in Chelsea Gray. And that's obvious. But the words that resonated with me, they both talked about veterans and leadership. Coaches talk about it all the time, but to hear, players, compliment their teammates for something that we may not ever see as opposition, or fans may not ever see, I thought it was crucial. And then they both spoke about pace. And, sometimes the chuckle was about maybe Odyssey's pace is fast sometimes, but I guarantee you the good outweighs the bad. If not, Brian Agler would not want her picking up the pace. She's gotten herself in shape. She can blow by people. I mean, she's going downhill with her left hand. She can finish at the rim. And this is what she's doing really well. She's kicking the people that are spotting up. And even Chelsea Gray, she said her gear was about fifth gear, but she has the hesitation. She has the body. She may not blow by you, but she can sure as heck blow through you. And then she's balanced. And then she has the vision. So you think about it, it's basically two scoring point guards out there on the court for LA, coupled with the quality of players that they're surrounded with. And when they're on point, they're really tough to beat, coupled with their defense. And extremely fun to watch. And one other key element, didn't really talk about this, but I think it's key. Yes, Maya was scoreless in the first half. She was in foul trouble, and that was the first time in this series. And I think Cheryl alluded to it when she spoke about, she did the quarter interview. She said, well, we're not as good with Maya off the court. And yes, that's obvious. But what that also allows, LA to do is you have their defensive player of the year in Elena Beard. And you would think Maya's off the court. Maybe she gets a break, but she doesn't. She has to go guard Simone Augustus. Now, granted, that's a tough assignment, but this wasn't one of Simone's best nights. And Cheryl actually set some of her key players down and went with what was working. And I credit her for that. But look, this series is far from over. The defense is going to continue to tighten up. I think they'll continue to be other players that are key. But at the end of the day, it's nice to see that the defense and the adjustments and certain players stepping up, watching their maturity level, watching them grow, and watching our game and some of the excitement that surrounds it. So looking forward to another fine game on Sunday, and want to wish both teams luck. LA as they try to close out for a championship, in Minnesota as they try to tie this series up and take it back home. So until the next time, it's Pokey Chatman, Indiana Fever head coach, signing off. Swish Appeal Real Talk.